First of all, I would like to welcome all of those who are going to participate as speakers to this conference, and all those who are going to be just participants, and all those that will follow the conference in the future. I'm really pleased to say that despite the facts and events that are happening worldwide and locally in Caucasus, we decided to go ahead. Of course, this is not going to be the usual 3-day event with the enjoyment of wonderful scenes of Dilijan and Republic of Armenia, other places like Sevan and others, but hopefully next year we'll come together again. Welcome to the second one, and of course, it's going to be difficult in a short time of one-day discussions to answer all of the questions. But one thing is clear, we have to address the main feature that the world indeed has changed. This is a new world, and this is the title of the conference. Initially, we were thinking of having a conference about artificial intelligence and geopolitics, but the events have forced us to do something more about understanding of the new world.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for having us. The Summit of Minds are a continuum of exceptional events that take place throughout the world. We met in Chamonix a month ago. We are today in Armenia. We've been in Canada in November, and then in Singapore, Paris, and Washington, D.C. in the first months of next year. And the purpose of each summit is twofold. The first is to gather our community, the community of the monthly barometer, always in exceptional locations, with exceptional individuals. This year, on the first count, much to our chagrin, COVID-19 prevented us from being in glorious Dilijan and Yerevan. But the second count is already a success. We are proud and delighted to be virtually hosted by the President, of course. And we have an amazing and very diverse group of participants, prominent policymakers, decision makers, investors, and thinkers from more than 20 countries today. The second purpose is to harness the exceptional amount of intellectual and social capital assembled at each Summit of Minds to shed light on what's happening in the world from a variety of perspectives: economic, geopolitical, societal, technological, environmental as well, and what may be coming, understand what may be coming, so that we can make the most appropriate professional and personal decisions. Today, we are assembled in Yerevan at a very particular juncture for Armenia, struck by COVID, like all countries around the world, plus a war, plus a conflict in the region. And for many of us today on the call, the situation epitomizes a critical and prescient. So today, we look forward to understanding more what this means for Armenia and for the world. Thank you, Riz.
Dear President Sargsyan, Excellencies, and dear friends, I'm very pleased to be with all of you for this new Summit of Minds. The world is going through difficult moments that ought to create solidarity and exemplarity. But on the contrary, we can see at all levels a rise of tensions, growing nationalism, starting with the situation in your own regions threatened by the ambitions of Azerbaijan and Turkey, choosing the logic of force and confrontation. I wish to renew to the people of your country my sincere friendship and express the willingness of France with Europe, as shown by President Macron, to contribute to a peaceful solution. We are in a time of pain, of fear, and difficulties. Only together, united, we may be able to address the global and unprecedented issues of our world. This is a time for coordinated vision and initiative. Thank you very much.
Dear Mr. President, esteemed guests of the Summit of Minds, Armenia 2020, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the President of the Republic of Armenia, Armեն Սարգսյան, for inviting me to such a momentous international event, which is taking place at such a difficult time today. Knowing the tragedy that is unfolding in the South Caucasus now, I would like to express my hope for a quick and peaceful resolution to the conflict. Now more than ever, it is important that we remain remain committed to dialogue and respect for human life regardless of age, gender and nationality. This is even more true today, given the spreading of the coronavirus throughout the world. Another reason why the use of force is simply unacceptable. The new global threat presents a serious challenge to humanity, claiming almost 5,000 lives around the world every day. Surely this is reason enough to develop a culture of dialogue between peoples and search for consensus solutions.
So, Your Excellency, Mr. President, dear friends and dear guests, I welcome you all to Armenian Summit of Minds. Unfortunately, we are meeting during difficult times. The world is going through a global pandemic, which already took more than 1 million lives and is nowhere near to a resolution. Armenia also experienced difficult times because of the pandemic, almost reaching its medical capacity around June. In the middle of September, the decision was made to open the schools despite the obvious risk of resurgence of the virus. The risk and possible negative spillovers on the economy was my main preoccupation until September 26. In the early morning of September 27, though, we found ourselves in the midst of war in Artsakh, also known as Nagorno-Karabakh. In a matter of hours, we started receiving news about heavy fighting and civilian casualties. This clearly illustrates that things can go terribly wrong terribly quickly. We used to live in a world where crisis was followed by a prolonged period of stability. Then the world became volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, famous acronym of the US Army War College. Now, as the title of the conference suggests, we're entering a new world. In my view, a world where crisis is a norm. The sources of change, as program clearly illustrates, can be very different. Geopolitics, technology, health, education, etc.
But I want just to focus on two events. One was C-19, as I said, the COVID. It has become a global event. If we go back another 100 years ago, COVID would start somewhere in China. It will reach, for example, Europe maybe in 10, 15 years' time, and while it was reaching Europe, probably it will die. It will never reach the United States of America. Now, in this new world, because of its behavior, the first case maybe is in China, the second one is in Italy, and the third one is Argentina. So we have to accept that this is a world that will be changing everything. So the world is changing, and COVID is reminder that pay attention. It's not about only health and healthcare. It's not about virus, but it's about everything in our life. Even that C20 that I was mentioning, which is Caucasus 20, somehow is a result of a changed world. The fact today is, while there is a Minsk process, while there is international recognized format for negotiations, and while these negotiations were going on more than 20 years, chaired by the best negotiators that you can find in today's world, United States, France, which represents Europe, and Russia, which has tremendous influence in the region, I think while this process were going, because the Azerbaijani side was not happy with the negotiations, they decided they can go into war. And 27th of September, they started the war. And the complication of this war is that it has included also inside this conflict, also Turkey, in many ways, starting from military up to the military airplanes, their drones and their advisors, their officers and generals, up to bringing into the region Islamic terrorists. So it completely changes from a small, more or less contained conflict that could have been resolved through negotiations under the auspices of OSCE and 3 co-chairs, has a potential of growing into something that will completely destroy the whole region. Imagine this conflict growing up, and there'll be other participants except Turkey, and making the scale of it huge, and making the whole thing uncontrollable. Not Syria, but this will be Syria multiplied to 10. And it will hit everybody, from Georgia up to Russia and everywhere. So my call is, and I will be very happy to listen to our colleagues, and maybe if you'll give me a chance at the very end of it to make some small comments as well. So I welcome my colleagues, and I will be very happy to learn from them.
Honorable Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, if it's possible, I ask you with my very soft proposal. May I speak in Russian? Have you a translation or not?
As far as I know, Mr. Shvidkoy, we don't have anything direct that can work for our numerous attendees from around the world, so it might be a bit difficult.
Good. In this case, I would speak in English, and you will.
Thank you, sir.
Because my English not Oxbridge. In this case, I ask you be quite understandable.
I suspect it's a lot better than our Russian, so for some of us. Thank you, sir.
The point number one, I am very glad that today in the early morning or in the deep night yesterday in Moscow finalized the 11-hour negotiation between 2 ministers of foreign affairs. I talked about the ministers of foreign affairs of Armenia and Azerbaijan, and now we have a chance for the future negotiations because we have the humanitarian time for exchange of between the troops. This is very, very important for all of us, and I think today we have a chance to speak about future much more optimistic than day before.
I believe that this summit of minds is not sufficient. I apologize. Because usually, customarily, after the sessions, mixed went to some nice venue, raised glasses, and wished each other good health, prosperity, like it's customary in the Southern Caucasus. The current new tech does not yet allow us to do this. We will have to raise those glasses solitarily. Nevertheless, I raised the virtual glass to all of us.
В этом прекрасном месте мира, каким
part
является
of the
Южный
world,
Кавказ,
which is the
в этом
southern
прекраснейшем
Caucasus,
месте
in this
планеты был мир.
most beautiful part of the planet, I would like
Остальное
for
мы
peace
будем
to
решать шаг за
persevere.
шагом. Шнора Калучун,
Thank you, all the best.
Since September 27th, Azerbaijan has launched a large-scale offensive along the entire line of contact with Artsakh. Today, the Azerbaijani armed forces launched attacks on military-civilian infrastructures of the internationally recognized territory of Armenia. This includes the civilian population. One civilian was killed. A civilian bus was shelled. In the morning, F-16 fighters from the Turkish Air Force ensured the delivery of bombing and missile strikes against settlements and ground units of the Armenian armed forces. Turkish multifunctional fighters shot down a Republic of Armenia Air Force Su-25 fighter in the airspace of the Republic of Armenia. Unfortunately, the pilot died. During the attack, the Armenian armed forces downed an Azeri drone in the Vardenis area.
Azerbaijan's attack on the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic was thoroughly planned. There is solid evidence that proves this. On September 24th, the BBC's Russian service reported that a sudden mobilization of reservists had begun in Azerbaijan, which was extended to 2 months instead of the previously announced 15 days. The mobilized were called to military commissariats and immediately sent to military exercises. Concurrently, civilian vehicles were being gathered. Moreover, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Azerbaijan did not omit from its announcement that the vehicles were being recruited for military purposes. Pickup trucks were confiscated and parked in squares by police. Last week, the international media was actively circulating information that Turkish militants were being transferred to Azerbaijan to take part in hostilities against Armenia. The information on the number of militants and their salaries vary from source to source. For example, in her Twitter microblog, well-known German journalist Lindsay Snell mentioned that the militants of the Hamza Union, mainly an Arab Turkmen armed group, moved to the capital Baku via Turkey. The journalist also noted that the militants are mainly being transferred from Syria. Apart from that, she published a recording which states that about 1,000 militants will be transferred to Azerbaijan between September 27th and 30th. Another entity close to the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army has also stated that Turkey had promised to pay $1,800 to each militant destined for Azerbaijan. According to the information, the SNA sent several groups of militants to Azerbaijan. At the same time, over the past month, flights of Turkish cargo warplanes to Azerbaijan have reached an unprecedented level. These movements by the Turkish Air Force had most probably one main goal: to supply military equipment to Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijani side warned its population about the launch of military operations even on the eve of the offensive. On social media, videos calling for no footage to be taken showing the movements of Azerbaijani armed forces. Tural Ganjaliev, a member of the Azerbaijani parliament who is engaged in anti-Armenian activities, also called on people to not publish any photos and videos from the front line. Such actions make it obvious that the Azerbaijani side purposefully prepared for the attack and prepared its society for that. The video includes this quote: "It is also forbidden to disseminate the photos of military and civil objects on the border and front line. Do not forget that the victory is born from unity. This is our way to Karabakh." 2 days before the attack on September 25th, Azerbaijan refused the request of the personal representative of the OSCE chairman in office to conduct a monitoring mission on the front line, which plainly shows that the aim of Azerbaijan was to hide its plans of starting a war. Turkish media agencies have shown a masterclass of operative work. As soon as the military offensive started, Turkish media was already in place and were covering the events via livestream. At 8:13 a.m., TRT was already live, covering the events under the title "The Attack by Armenia Against Azerbaijan." Under no circumstance could Turkish film crews reach Azerbaijan in 1 hour, move to the front line, and start live coverage of events. These events were all accompanied by military rhetoric and calls for violence, both in the country and on the international arena. The Azerbaijani military and political authorities were openly speaking about attacks and the consequent cases of violence.
The conclusions of the last 2 weeks probably are some of the ones that I heard from our colleagues here. And one of them is keep your friends very close to you. And the second conclusion that we saw there is that even with the 2 weeks of very hard battling, the Republic of Artsakh, the Nagorno-Karabakh people, which are very, very small unit, have shown that they cannot be beaten even by Azerbaijan, plus Turkey and plus the international terroristic groups, Islamic terrorists that were brought to the region. And the third one is that eventually probably there is no other solution rather than going to the table of negotiations and basically negotiating up to the end the future of Nagorno-Karabakh and the future of the whole region. And of course, war is not a solution at all. Now coming to some of the comments that were made here. First, Mr. Kaspersky made an interesting presentation of cybersecurity. My small comment, of course, for a short period of time that I have now, is that unfortunately this is not only about cyberspace that surrounds the businessmen and other activities. Cyber wars or the virtual wars are already going on worldwide, and I think in different forms, starting for interfering other people's elections, democracy, institutions, and so on and so forth. And we have seen in this conflict between Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan, huge cyber attacks. And I think cyber wars are reality today, and they are basically everywhere. Not necessarily they mean that they are doing the physical destruction, but the virtual destruction that brings to a physical destruction is huge. And of course, the usage of new types of arms and armaments, especially, for example, during this conflict by Azeri side, Turkish drones and Israeli-made drones, they are all also virtual. They are all connected to cyber and cyber security. So cyber security is very important. And I think we are not taking, worldwide, we're not taking the threat of cyber seriously. For the way I see it is as serious as it was the nuclear threat during the Cold War. And it's the time the international community, and this is not only going to be the superpowers, because if even Russia and United States will agree on how to control cyber, that will not end the cyber risk globally. Because it's not only just cyber, because the most important value worldwide now is not the natural resources, not oil, not gas, but it's data. And it's everywhere. And the complexity is here. You cannot take just 5 generals from Russian, Soviet side and 5 generals from United States. They come, they agree, and the agreement is signed, because there are so many other players here, and up to 16, 17 years old girls and boys, geniuses, that can interfere in cyberspace and create a havoc. So small, as I agree, that small is becoming important in many ways. So cyber is important, and cyber can also hit the nuclear side. It was nice to hear our colleague speaking about nuclear safety and security. And for me as an Armenian and the president of Armenia, it was very disturbing to hear from Azeri official side saying that if the war continues, they will hit the nuclear power plant in Armenia. I mean, this is completely unacceptable, because a small conflict which is around Nagorno-Karabakh can become a regional and global disaster with another Chernobyl if they will hit the nuclear power plant. It's not going to hit only Armenia, it's going to hit everywhere. And the way they can hit is not only by sort of a weapon, mechanical weapon, but they can hit also with electronic one, with cyber. So cyber, the small one, and in this case, when you are going to negotiate the future of the world on cyber security, you have to take into account not only Russia and United States, not only China, not only smaller states, but you have to go up to the bottom and find a way, how do you control individual genius that 100 years ago would have become Albert Einstein, or 50 years ago would have become Steve Jobs. Now that person will enjoy becoming the disturber. So how do you do that? Well, that's something that we have to discuss, and I value very highly what that Ambassador Shvitkoy has said about human values. Because that's, in our human life, there are things that they are variables. They can change with the time, they can change with the space, with the place, but there are things that are constants. And the valuables, the constants that are at the bottom, at the very base of that, are our human values. And you very nicely spoke about that. You spoke about beauty. You spoke about the famous letter to Albert Einstein, but you spoke about also beauty. And it brings me again to the thought that is connected to the recent events of, I call it C20. I call it C20 to emphasize that small conflict in Caucasus can have a big regional, even global sort of destruction. So when I think about it, I think about that beautiful country which is called Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, and the beauty that you can see it, and then I see today the destruction of that. So in order to develop something for the future, be that quasi-quantum, quasi-classic, the base of that should be and will be probably human values, and beauty as a conceptual thing is one of the most important things here as well. Well, I think at least we all recognize that the next world, the new world that we're going to face, or our children are going to face, is not going to be exactly the same that was 10 or 20 years ago. On the sort of a specific classical or conservative point of view of Professor Karaganov, it will change the big players and the others will continue more or less where they are. Or on the other day, or the other pole of this opinion, this is a world of uncertainties and new, and the big and the big and the small, they all will have their word and their influence on what is happening. Of course, the big will have big influence, but it doesn't mean that you can exclude the small. And the small goes not to the smaller states, what I mean. Small goes, like in the cybersecurity case, to an individual. And here's where we come to the idea that eventually individuals and their groups will decide many things. Maybe it looks like philosophical, but I'm sorry, this is the new world that we are entering. And we have to put a lot of effort, discussions, conferences, in order to understand and bring each of our ideas and contribution in order to eventually define what is this new world going to look like. And I hope that our conference today had made a small step towards creating this debate worldwide, that what is happening to this world, how we are going to live tomorrow. Well, thank you, Reese.